The scream didn't carry. The storm chewed it to threads and flung it into the dark. Eli Hart heard it anyway. He stopped on the river trail with snow plastering his beard and ice gnawing through his boots, one hand snapping down to the harness on the German shepherd at his knee. The dog froze at the touch, muscles coiling, breath rising in white bursts. "Rook," Eli said, voice low, steady. "Find." The shepherd's head lifted into the needles of wind. One ear cocked. Then he surged forward, not the wild pull of a house pet, but the sure drive of a trained partner who knew what his verb meant. His paws swallowed ground in silence, carving a path through drifts along the swollen river's black edge. Eli followed, every step a measured calculation angle of slope, crust of ice, where the snow hid water, where water hid death. He'd moved like this in other winters, in other countries, when the world came down to lines you crossed and lines you didn't. The old habits rode the bones whether he invited them or not. A shattered safety rail appeared out of the white. Beyond it, the river flung itself at the pilings of an abandoned footbridge, angry and loud. Rook veered left, hackles rising, and slid to a crouch behind a concrete abutment tagged with ghosted graffiti. He put his body between the wind and a small hunched shape in the lee. It was a child. Eli's breath stalled in his throat. The girl sat on the frozen gravel like a lost bird, knees hooked to her chest, arms around a threadbare backpack so pink it seemed cruel against the winter. The strap was torn and tied in a hard knot. Her socks were bunched at her ankles, sneakers soaked, bare skin marbled with cold. A light scarf, white once, now the grey of a tired sky, was wound sloppy around her neck. One end hung like a surrender flag. There was a smudge under her eye that wasn't dirt. Her eyes, wide, glass bright, tracked Rook first. The dog lowered his head until his nose touched the backspine. Snow. No growl, no bark. Just that careful, deliberate stillness he saved for elders and children and people who bled on the inside. Eli lifted his hands where she could see them. "Hey," he said, letting the word be quiet and warm. "We've got you." She flinched, not at the voice, at the motion of his hand, at the possibility of touch. He made himself small, sinking to one knee, palm open on his thigh, as if he was offering the storm a truce. "What's your name?" he asked. She didn't answer. Her fingers pinched the pink strap so hard the knuckles went white. Snowflakes clung to her lashes and didn't melt. Rook inched forward on his belly. The girl's gaze snapped to him again, a flicker of something like recognition cutting through the fog, hope, or the memory of it. Rook stopped a foot away, breath huffing soft and dog-sweet. He looked up at Eli for permission. Eli gave the tiniest nod. "Rook," Eli said, the way he used to say partner names in doorways. "Say hello." The shepherd slid the last few inches and set his chin by the girl's knee, eyes never leaving her face. It was an old miracle, the way trust could cross species faster than it ever crossed a room between wounded people. The girl's hand, shaking, came off the backpack. She put her fingers into the thick fur at Rook's ruff and held on like you hold a rung. "I'm Eli," he said. "This is Rook. We're not going to hurt you." Her lips parted, blue at the edges. When sound came, it was the size of a thread. "Cold." Eli shrugged out of his outer parka and angled himself so the river wind hit his back. He laid the coat like a tent over the girl and the dog both, a small, warm shelter inside a world that didn't deserve one. Up close, he could see more, a fingerprint yellowing along her wrist bone, a patch of skin on her forearm that had known the cruel circle of something too tight, the clean line of a small hand that had learned to hold its breath. "You hurt anywhere?" he asked. Her chin dipped toward the backpack as if it could answer for her. Eli noticed the stitching on the front pocket, crooked letters in childish thread, L-I-A. Maybe the second L had been pulled and re-sewn. Maybe the hand that taught her to sew wasn't here to fix things anymore. "Leah," he said softly. "Is that you?" Her eyes lifted. For an instant, she wasn't a child on a riverbank. She was a name being called the right way. She nodded. "Okay, Leah," Eli said. "We're going to get you warm. I've got a truck right up the trail. Rook will walk with you. Can you stand?" At the word truck, her fingers tightened on the strap again. The kind of flinch that wasn't about cold anymore. The kind your body learns when doors slam and men breathe beer and tires eat gravel and the only map you own says stay very small. "No trucks?" Eli offered, watching her pupils, watching the way fear turned her inward. "We can walk to town if you want, but we need to leave this spot. The bank isn't safe." A ridge of ice at the water's lip cracked. The sound went through the ground and up his bones like electricity. Rook's ears tipped, calculating. Eli counted seconds he didn't have. "I'll carry you," he said, then corrected himself with a soldier's discipline. "I can carry you if you say it's okay. Or Rook can walk between us and you hold his harness. Your choice." Leah looked at the dog, looked at Eli's hand still open, still empty. The decision took a long lifetime and 3 heartbeats. "Rook," she whispered. The shepherd eased to his feet with a low chuff that meant, "I heard you." Eli slid his glove under Leah's elbow, barely touching, just guiding the physics of standing. She weighed less than the parka. When she swayed, Rook shouldered in so her hip met his spine. It was how he'd learned to bring men with torn legs out of blast-dusted rooms. Slow, steady, no apology. They climbed the riprap together. The storm pressed its thumb harder on the world. Halfway up, Leah's breath hitched sharp. Eli felt the hitch in his own lungs, memory sinking to present like a bad radio finding a station. A hallway with paint the color of old teeth. A door that didn't open fast enough. A scream that didn't carry in a different country. He hitched that past to the harness of now and hauled it forward. At the trail, he put the parka back around her and snapped it off at the neck. "How old, Leah?" Her mouth moved, counting something invisible. 6. 6 is brave, Eli said, and he meant it like a medal. The truck sat under a sugar of snow at the bend, its windshield wipers lifted like hands in surrender. When it came into view, Leah stopped. The flinch came again, full body, a memory with teeth. Her hand found Rook's collar and clamped. "No truck," she said, louder than a whisper now, as if volume could build a wall. Tears didn't come, they were frozen or spent. "Okay," Eli said. He kept his voice the same shape. "No truck." He looked at the road, white, empty, hostile, and at Leah's knees shaking under a coat that could hide 2 of her. "We go to the ranger station. There's a stove. It's a walk, but I've got you." He reached for his radio to call it in, then paused. The radio would bring lights. Lights brought attention. Attention brought men who asked questions in ways that broke people harder. He would bring help, but first he would bring warmth. The wind shifted. Rook's head snapped toward the trees upriver. He went still in that way that turned him from somebody's dog into a sensor net with a heart. Eli listened. Not much. The storm sanded edges off every sound. Then there, a distant engine, small, pushing hard, coming along the service road that paralleled the river. Headlights cut briefly through trees like knives and vanished. "Eli?" Leah said, small and urgent, like she was testing. If the name could keep a promise. "If he comes," he crouched so they were eye level. "Who is he, Leah?" Her throat worked. The word came out like a bruise you said out loud. "Mark." Rook's ears ticked at the name, as if cataloguing a target. Eli felt heat roll under the cold, old anger waking like a bear. He put it on a chain. "You're not going back to anyone who hurts you," he said. Not a vow he made lightly, not a vow he'd break. Another sound rode the storm then, nearer, the metallic rattle of a loose tailpipe. A vehicle easing off the main road and onto the river track, trying to be quiet and failing. Rook moved instinctively, stepping in front of Leah so his body blocked her from the bend. Eli's hand found the dog's harness, a wordless touch full of years. Rook leaned into it, a bridge between the child and the man. Eli looked at the curve in the trees, at the slice of road that would reveal whoever came, at the river that kept its own counsel. He scanned for cover, for egress, for every worse version of the next 5 minutes. "Leah," he said, and he kept it soft even as his pulse clipped. "Do you have anything important in your backpack?" She nodded. Her chapped lips trembled. "My scarf. A picture." "Hold them," he said. "Hold them tight." The headlights skimmed over snow and hit the white of the trail ahead, blooming light like a wound. The truck that crawled into view was a dented sedan the color of old pennies. The driver's window was down, despite the cold. A man's arm hung out, cigarette burning a mean orange. The car idled to a stop 10 yards away. The man leaned his head out and smiled a smile made of small knives. "Well, look at that," he called over the storm, his voice too loud, too familiar. "Playing hero again, soldier?" Rook's lips peeled back 1 millimeter. Eli felt the growl start in the dog's chest before he heard it. Leah's fingers knotted in the scarf inside the clasp. "Backpack." She pressed her face into Rook's neck and whispered a string of words the wind almost stole. "Please," she breathed, so soft Eli could have pretended he didn't hear. "Please don't send me back." The man flicked ash into the snow and opened his door. The man's cigarette hissed as it hit the drift. He stepped out of the rusted sedan with a kind of swagger that didn't match the storm gnawing at the riverbank. The snow clung to his boots, the wind tugged his coat half off his shoulders, but he didn't care. Men like him thought the world bent to their noise. "Didn't expect to see you out here, soldier," he called, voice dripping with mockery. "You got my girl? Hand her over." Rook stood between the child and the man, body low, fur bristling, a growl steady in his chest like a warning drumbeat. His amber eyes glowed against the snow. Every inch of him was ready. Eli rose slowly, keeping himself between the stranger and Leah. He didn't reach for the knife at his belt, though his muscles remembered how. He just planted his boots firm in the snow. "She's freezing. She's hurt. She's not going anywhere with you." The man's smile snapped into a snarl. "That ain't your call. She belongs to me." Eli caught the words "belongs" and felt the old anger stir, the one he'd fought to bury in long nights alone. He clenched his jaw, forcing the fury into something steadier. "Kids don't belong to anybody," he said. "Not like property, not like that." The man took a step forward. Rook moved at the same time, blocking, teeth flashing. The growl deepened until it was more than sound. It was the memory of wolves in the bloodline. The man froze, spitting to cover his hesitation. "Keep your mutt back, or I'll—" "You'll what?" Eli's voice was calm, colder than the storm. "Hit me instead? Go ahead. But you don't touch her. Not again." Behind him, he felt Leah clutch the backpack tighter, her breaths fast and shallow against the fabric. She whispered into Rook's fur, almost soundless. "Don't let him." "I won't," Eli said, loud enough for her, not the man. The storm howled louder, throwing needles of ice across their faces. Eli's eyes narrowed, scanning. This wasn't the place for a fight. The river was too close, the slope too slick, and the girl too fragile. He needed distance, time, shelter. He needed to outthink this, not outfight it. "Get in the car, Leah," the man barked, his voice snapping like a whip. "Now, before I get mad." Leah flinched, the reaction too quick, too old. Eli crouched, putting himself in her line of sight. "You're not getting in that car," he said gently. "Not with him. You stay with me and Rook. You hear me? We'll keep you safe." Rook's ears flicked back, waiting for Eli's word. The soldier touched the harness. "Steady, boy." The man stepped closer, trying to loom. "You don't know what you're messing with, soldier. Walk away." Eli's steel-blue gaze locked on him, steady as iron. If I was the kind of man who walked away, she'd already be gone. For a moment, the storm held everything in suspension. The river snarling below, the girl clutching her pack like a lifeline, the K9 trembling with readiness, and the soldier standing with every ghost of his past pressing on his shoulders. The man cursed under his breath, spat again, then backed toward the sedan. "This ain't over," he growled. He slammed the door, the engine whining as the tires spun in the snow. The car slid back onto the track, taillights bleeding red through the white curtain, and then it was swallowed by the storm. Only the wind remained. Eli let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands shook once before he clenched them still. He turned to Leah, crouching low again. She was still frozen in place, eyes wide, body coiled for impact. "He's gone," Eli said softly. "He won't touch you tonight." Rook pressed closer, nudging her with his muzzle, anchoring her in the present. After a long silence, she whispered, "He always comes back." Eli's chest tightened. He rested a hand on the backpack, careful not to take it from her, just letting her feel the weight of his presence. "Not this time, Leah. Not if I can help it." He stood, scanning the river trail. They couldn't risk staying here. "Come on, ranger station's 2 miles. We'll make it." They started walking, Rook leading, Leah gripping his harness, Eli shielding their flank. Each step broke silence with the crunch of snow and the whisper of the storm. Eli's mind replayed the man's face, the sneer, the word "belongs." And under it all, like a shadow stitched to his ribs, came the memory of another small face, his daughter, Emily. He'd held her hand through hospital nights until her fingers went still. He had walked away from that room broken, carrying silence like a coffin. He would not walk away again. Not from this child. Not from this night. By the time the ranger station's dark outline appeared through the storm, Leah's legs had buckled. Eli scooped her up, weightless in his arms, her head falling against his chest. Rook pushed open the drift at the door with his body, ears sharp for any threat. Inside, Eli set her gently near the wood stove and stripped his gloves to coax the fire alive. Orange light bloomed, fighting the storm's blue grip. For the first time, warmth began to creep back into the girl's face. She held the backpack tighter still, whispering into the fabric as if it could hear her. Eli bent close. "What's in there, Leah?" he asked softly. Her lips trembled. Then, for the first time, she looked at him, really looked, and whispered words that cracked the night open. "My sister." Eli's heart slammed once. He glanced at Rook, whose ears tilted forward at the word. The storm rattled the shutters like a warning, but Eli knew it wasn't the wind that would haunt them next. It was the promise of another child still out there. The fire took time to catch. Eli crouched in front of the stove, coaxing life into damp wood until flames licked and smoke curled up the iron pipe. The storm outside beat its fists against the station windows, but inside, the orange glow spread across the floorboards like a fragile promise. Rook settled close, his broad back a barrier between the door and the child, amber eyes always scanning. Leah sat curled in a blanket Eli had found in the supply closet, her small frame dwarfed by it. She clutched her backpack to her chest, chin pressed hard against the frayed strap. The stormlight made her eyes seem too large, two grey pools with no bottom. Eli watched her from the edge of the hearth. "You said, your sister," he began carefully. "Where is she?" Leah's lips parted, but no sound came. She stared at the fire, trembling, as though the answer might leap out in the sparks. Finally, she whispered, "Home." The word cracked like ice splitting. "Home with Mark?" Eli asked. She nodded once, the smallest motion. "Lucy," she added after a long silence. "We're twins." Eli felt the words punch through him. He remembered Emily, his own daughter, and the way her laugh had once filled every corner of their house. Twins, two halves of a whole. One here, abandoned. One still with the man who'd sneered through the storm. "Why you?" Eli asked gently. He didn't want to press, but he needed to know. Leah hugged the backpack tighter. Her fingers worried at the seams, frayed fabric unraveling under her touch. He likes her better," she whispered. "Lucy's the good one. I'm not." The words were too old for 6 years. Eli's throat burned. He wanted to put a hand on her shoulder, to tell her no child was not good, but he knew touch could wound as easily as heal. So instead, he leaned back, kept his voice steady. "You're not bad, Leah. You're just cold. And scared. That doesn't make you bad. That makes you human." Rook let out a soft chuff, the kind he used when soldiers came home broken but breathing. Leah glanced down at him, fingers sliding into his fur. "He doesn't lie," she whispered, as if Rook himself had spoken the truth. Eli's chest ached. That was the bond, the bridge. If the girl trusted Rook, she might one day trust him too. Outside, a branch cracked under the weight of ice. Leah flinched hard, eyes snapping to the door. Eli's instincts flared. He rose, checked the latch, peered into the storm's white wall. Nothing, but his gut whispered this fight wasn't over. He returned to the fire, lowering his voice. "We'll find Lucy," he promised. "We'll get her safe too." Leah shook her head almost violently. "If he knows I told, he'll hurt her." Tears streaked her face, hot tracks cutting through cold pallor. Eli felt the old fury coiled tight in his gut. He wanted to storm out, track the man down, end it the way soldiers end threats. But he had learned, painfully, that fists didn't fix broken children. Words, patience, proof those did. "You're not alone anymore," he said firmly. "Not you. Not Lucy. We'll bring help." Rook shifted, laying his head on Leah's lap, eyes closing but ears pricked. She bent her face into his fur and whispered, so quiet Eli barely heard it over the crackle of the stove, "Please don't send me back." The words rooted into Eli's bones. He had failed once before. Emily had slipped through his hands no matter how tightly he'd held on, but this child, shaking in a ranger station with nothing but a backpack and a name stitched crooked, he would not fail her. He turned to the radio on the wall, fingers hovering over the mic. Calling it in meant lights, questions, bureaucracy, but it also meant protection. He looked back at Leah, then at Rook. The dog's amber eyes met his, steady, waiting. "We'll make the call," Eli murmured. "But on our terms, we do this right." He lifted the mic, pressed the button, and spoke the words that would set the next storm in motion. "Dispatch, this is Hart. I've got a child. Female, about 6. Injuries visible. She's safe with me now. But there's another child still in danger. Request immediate CPS involvement." Static crackled, then a voice replied, clipped but urgent. "Copy that. Stay put, Hart. We're sending a caseworker at first light." Eli set the mic down, the decision made. He turned back to Leah. She was staring at him, eyes wide, as if waiting for him to break the promise. He knelt, steady as stone. "You're not going back to him," he said. "Not tonight. Not ever." The storm howled, the fire snapped, and Leah finally let the backpack slip just enough for Eli to see what was inside. A crumpled photo of two identical girls, arms linked, smiling with the innocence the world had since stolen. Morning came pale and grey, the storm's edge thinning into a sky the color of wet stone. Snow clung heavy to the ranger station roof, and icicles dripped like slow clocks. Eli hadn't slept. He sat near the fire with Rook stretched across the threshold like a guard carved from fur and loyalty. Leah lay curled in the blanket, her face softened in sleep but still tense, her backpack clutched to her chest. At exactly 8:10 a.m., the crunch of tires on ice broke the silence. Rook's head snapped up, his ears twitched, nose lifting. A vehicle pulled into the clearing, an old grey Subaru, wipers sweeping frost from the windshield. A woman climbed out, tall and slender, her wool coat pulled tight against the cold. Her light brown hair was bound in a bun, wisps escaping in the wind. She carried a leather satchel under one arm, a badge clipped neatly to her coat pocket. Eli opened the door before she knocked. "Grace Morgan?" he asked. She nodded, her hazel eyes sharp but kind. "Child Protective Services. You must be Hart. Dispatch said you found her." Eli stepped aside, Rook sniffing the air but making no move to block her. Grace's gaze swept the room, then softened when she spotted Leah stirring by the fire. The girl sat up, eyes wide, clutching her backpack tighter. Rook padded to her side, pressing against her, a living wall of safety. Grace crouched, lowering her voice. "Hi, sweetheart. My name's Grace. I help kids when they need someone to stand up for them." Leah shrank back, fingers digging into the strap. Grace didn't press. She simply set her satchel down and folded her hands in her lap, showing she wasn't a threat. "That's a beautiful backpack," she said gently. "Pink's my favorite color too." Leah's eyes flickered to Rook, then back to Grace. She didn't answer, but the tightness in her shoulders loosened by a thread. Eli joined them, keeping his tone calm. "She told me she has a twin sister, Lucy, still with the man who left her." Grace's expression hardened. "Mark Dawson?" The name in her mouth was confirmation. Eli's jaw tightened. "You know him?" Grace nodded slowly. "He's been flagged before. Neglect reports, none that stuck. He's smart, covers his tracks. But if we can document what you've seen and what Leah says, we have a chance." At the sound of her own name, Leah's head lowered. Her voice trembled, barely audible. "Don't make me go back." Grace's heart ached, but she kept her voice steady. "You won't, not if I can help it. But we need proof, pictures, statements, evidence. Otherwise a judge could send you back." She glanced at Eli. "She trusts you. That's important. You'll need to testify, Hart." Eli nodded without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." Grace pulled out her phone, snapping photos discreetly of Leah's bruises, her thin arms, the marks that told silent stories. She documented the torn strap, the frayed scarf, the photo of the twins. Each click felt like a hammer driving nails into a case that might finally hold. Then Grace stood, voice quiet but firm. "I'll file for an emergency protective order. It'll keep her in safe custody while we investigate. But Mark won't take this lying down. He'll push back hard." Eli's jaw tightened. "Let him. He'll find I don't break easy." As if summoned by the thought, Eli's phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Hart," a cold voice growled. "You have what's mine." Eli gripped the phone tight. "She's not yours." Mark Dawson's laugh slithered through the line. "You don't get it. You think you can play hero, but heroes bleed. You hand her over, or I'll make sure you regret stepping in my business." The line went dead. Eli lowered the phone slowly, the threat heavy in the air. Grace's expression darkened. "He's escalating. We need legal support fast." Rook growled low, sensing the tension. Leah clutched his fur, whispering into his ear, "Don't let him find me." Eli knelt beside her, steady as stone. "He won't," he said. "Not while I'm breathing. You're safe here." Grace met his gaze, her voice low. "We'll need an attorney, someone who doesn't flinch at men like Dawson." Eli nodded, resolve settling like armor. "I know just the one." The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, the storm eased into silence, but inside the ranger station, The real battle had just begun. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper and polish, its tall windows straining against the grey winter light. Eli stood on the stone steps, shoulders squared, Rook sitting tall at his side. The shepherd's amber eyes scanned the shifting crowd like a sentry. Inside, the air buzzed with muted voices, lawyers in dark suits moving like pieces on a board. Grace Morgan approached first, her wool coat buttoned tight, her eyes shadowed with fatigue but burning with quiet fire. "They'll try to paint you unstable," she warned. "Mark's attorney is ruthless, but remember, Leah's trust in you speaks louder than anything they say." Beside her stood Sarah Coleman, the attorney Grace had promised. She was in her early 40s, tall, with auburn hair cut in a sharp bob. Her green eyes met Eli's with unflinching resolve. "You're a soldier," she said, adjusting her blazer. "I need that discipline in there. Let me fight the words. You fight for her by staying steady." Eli nodded once. He wasn't afraid of judges or lawyers. He was afraid of one thing only, losing the child he had sworn to protect. The judge's gavel struck, echoing across the chamber. Judge Rebecca Moore presided, mid-40s, her sharp gaze cutting through pretense like glass. She read from the docket. "This hearing addresses the emergency custody petition regarding minor Leah Carter, 6 years old. Petitioner, Mr. Mark Dawson. Respondent, Mr. Eli Hart." Mark Dawson sat at the petitioner's table, wearing a navy suit that didn't quite fit, his jaw clenched, eyes sharp with contempt. Beside him, his lawyer, Daniel Price, looked polished, cold, a man used to bending truth until it broke. Sarah rose first. Her voice was calm but commanding. "Your Honor, this isn't a custody disagreement. This is abuse. We have photographic evidence, CPS testimony, and Leah's own words. Returning her to Mr. Dawson would endanger her life." Price stood, smoothing his tie. "With all due respect, Your Honor, these so-called injuries are exaggerations. Children fall, they bruise. Mr. Hart found a way to insert himself into this family matter. He has no legal claim and no stability. He is a man haunted by war, unfit to care for a child." The words struck, but Eli kept his jaw tight, gaze steady. Sarah placed a hand on his arm, a silent reminder. "Hold the line." Grace took the witness stand. Her voice carried both compassion and steel. She described Leah's malnourishment, the rope-like marks on her wrists, the way she flinched at loud sounds. "This is not neglect," Grace said firmly. "This is deliberate harm." Price tried to cut her down. "Children misinterpret. Isn't it true she clung to Mr. Hart immediately? Isn't it possible he influenced her statements?" Grace didn't flinch. She trusted the dog first. That bond was natural, instinctive. The child knew safety when she felt it. Finally, Leah was called. The courtroom hushed as the small girl walked forward, clutching her pink backpack. Rook padded with her, allowed by the judge after Sarah's request. He lay down at her feet, his head on her knee. Leah stroked his fur, grounding herself. Sarah crouched beside her, voice soft. "Leah, do you feel safe with Mr. Dawson?" The child's grey eyes filled with shadows. She shook her head hard. "Can you tell us why?" For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Leah whispered, voice trembling, "He locks me in the basement. He says I'm broken." A murmur rippled through the room. Judge Moore's expression flickered professional, but human. Mark leapt up, red-faced. "She's lying. She always lies." "Sit down, Mr. Dawson," Judge Moore ordered, her voice sharp as a blade. "One more outburst, and you'll be removed." Leah buried her face in Rook's fur. The shepherd shifted closer, a silent guardian. Sarah nodded to the judge. "Your Honor, we request Leah remain under Eli Hart's care pending full investigation." Judge Moore reviewed the photos, the reports, the trembling child before her. Then she spoke, voice measured but resolute. "The court grants temporary guardianship of Leah Carter to Mr. Hart for 90 days. CPS oversight will continue weekly. This matter will reconvene after further investigation." Eli exhaled slowly, relief mingling with resolve. Beside him, Rook thumped his tail once against the floor. Leah clung tighter to her backpack, her eyes flicking up at Eli as though daring to believe him. But across the courtroom, Mark Dawson's face twisted, fury boiling under the surface. He leaned to his attorney, whispering something low and venomous. Sarah caught the glance, her green eyes narrowing. "He won't stop here," she murmured to Eli. "We need to be ready. He'll strike back." Eli glanced at Leah, still stroking Rook's ears, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. For the first time, a sliver of light cut through the grey weight on his chest. He had won a battle, but the war for her safety was just beginning. The courthouse victory bought them time, but not peace. Snow still lined the streets of Portland, Maine, and every shadow seemed to hold the shape of Mark Dawson's threat. Eli knew men like him cornered, desperate, dangerous. At Sarah Coleman's law office, the blinds were drawn against the glare of late winter. Sunday papers lay scattered across the mahogany desk, legal pads filled with Sarah's neat handwriting. She pushed her glasses higher on her nose, green eyes sharp. "Mark's not fighting just for custody," she said. "He's fighting to protect something bigger. We need to find his motive." Grace Morgan nodded, flipping through her CPS notes. "He doesn't hold a steady job, yet he's been covering expenses, lawyers, cars, bills. It doesn't add up." Eli stood near the window, Rook planted at his heel, Leah curled in a chair clutching her backpack. The child's drawings, clumsy sketches of dogs, trees, and houses were spread across the coffee table. But Eli's focus never left Sarah. "So we dig," he said. "What do we look for?" "The accountant." Later that week, Sarah introduced them to Michael Hargrove, a forensic accountant with thinning grey hair and round glasses. He carried a laptop and spoke with quiet authority. "I've traced Dawson's accounts. Regular deposits every month, always from the same entity. Riverside Care Foundation." Grace frowned. "That's a non-profit for terminally ill children." Michael nodded grimly. "Exactly. According to paperwork Dawson filed, Leah is chronically ill. He submitted medical forms, diagnostic records, even treatment plans." He clicked, and forged documents appeared on the screen, bearing fake signatures and false letterheads, all falsified. "He's been collecting funds for years." Sarah leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "So not only abuse, fraud, exploitation, that's motive. He needs Leah in his custody to keep the money flowing." Eli's fists clenched. He looked at Leah, her small frame tucked against Rook's side, oblivious to the weight of words like fraud and exploitation. She reached up to scratch the shepherd's ear, murmuring softly to him. "Proof is enough to destroy his case," Sarah said firmly. "But it also makes him dangerous. If he knows we're close, he may lash out." That night, back at Eli's modest house, Leah stirred restlessly on the couch. Shadows from the fireplace danced across her pale face. Eli sat nearby, running a hand over his tired features. Finally, Leah spoke, her voice raw. "He told them I was sick. He said I was dying." Eli's heart stuttered. "Who told them?" "Mark," she whispered. "He made me drink medicine that made me sleep. Took pictures when I looked pale. He told me not to smile. Said if I smiled, they wouldn't believe." Tears tracked down her cheeks. She clutched Rook tighter. "I wasn't sick, but he said I was a mistake. Worth more broken." Eli knelt beside her, his voice steady though his soul shook. "Listen to me, Leah. You are not a mistake. You are not broken. He used you, but he doesn't own you. Not anymore." Rook nosed her cheek, a soft whine, and Leah buried her face in his fur, shoulders shaking. The next day, Sarah laid out the plan in her office. "We subpoena Riverside Care records. We show the fraudulent medical reports. That will strip Dawson of any claim and open a criminal case. But it means court again fast," Grace added. "And until then, Leah stays under protective custody. No contact with Dawson." Eli nodded, his jaw set like iron. "If he tries, he goes through me." Sarah met his gaze. "And Rook?" The shepherd lifted his head, as if understanding, amber eyes gleaming. "The threat returns." That night, snow fell silent over the street outside Eli's house. The fire burned low. Eli had just pulled the blanket over Leah when Rook shot up, a growl deep in his chest. He ran to the window, hackles high. Eli's heart pounded. He crossed the room, peered out through the frost. A car sat idling across the street, headlights off, just the faint glow of a cigarette burning in the driver's seat. Eli's fists clenched. He looked back at the small girl sleeping fitfully on the couch, Rook pressed against her side. This wasn't just about court anymore. The war had come to their door. The cigarette ember vanished, but Eli knew it wasn't over. Predators circled before they struck. That night he slept in the armchair by the door, rifle propped close. Rook stretched across the floorboards like a silent barricade. Leah dreamed fitfully on the couch, clutching her backpack, her small fingers tangled in the shepherd's fur. It came at 2:17 a. Mirth. the faint crunch of boots on snow. Rook's growl vibrated before Eli even woke fully, then the sound of glass shattering in the kitchen. Eli was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand, heart hammering but movements precise, soldier sharp. He gestured once, a signal ingrained, "Guard the child." Rook moved to the couch, pressing his bulk against Leah as she startled awake, eyes wide in the dark. "Stay with Rook," Eli whispered, voice low but steady. "Don't move until I say." She nodded, trembling, burying her face against the shepherd's neck. Mark Dawson staggered through the kitchen, a crowbar in his grip, breath steaming. His eyes gleamed with fury and desperation. "You think you can steal from me?" he snarled. "She's mine. The court doesn't change that." Eli stepped into the doorway, rifle lowered but ready. "You're not taking her, Dawson. Not now, not ever," Mark sneered. "You gonna shoot me in front of her? That'll look real good in court." Eli's jaw tightened. "I don't need to. The law will bury you. Fraud, abuse, it's over." Mark's laugh was wild. "Law's slow. I'm here now." He lunged forward, crowbar raised. Eli blocked with the rifle stock, the crack of metal on wood echoing in the dark. The impact jarred his arms, but he pushed forward, shoving Mark back against the counter. The man swung again, catching Eli's shoulder. Pain exploded, but Eli gritted his teeth, muscles burning with old battlefield fire. "Rook!" he barked. The shepherd launched from the couch, a blur of fur and fury. He hit Mark square in the chest, knocking him to the floor. The crowbar clattered across the tiles. Rook's teeth clamped on Mark's arm, a growl ripping through the room like thunder. Mark howled, thrashing, trying to shake free. "Get him off! Get him off!" Eli pressed the rifle muzzle to Mark's temple. His voice was ice. "Don't move! You hurt her again, and God help me, I'll end you right here." For a breathless second, the world froze. Mark pinned under Rook, Eli looming above, Leah clutching her backpack in the corner. Then headlights washed across the wall, police cruisers screeching to a stop outside. Grace Morgan burst through the door, 2 officers at her side. "Eli, stand down!" she shouted. "We've got him!" Eli exhaled, the weight of choice heavy on his chest. Slowly, he eased Rook back. The shepherd obeyed, muscles taut, eyes never leaving the man. Officers cuffed Mark, dragging him upright. His face was twisted, his arm bleeding where Rook's teeth had marked justice deeper than any gavel. "You'll pay for this," Mark spat, blood flecking his lip. "She'll never be yours." Grace's eyes hardened. "No, Mark, she'll never be yours again." Aftermath. The door closed behind the officers. Silence fell, broken only by Leah's small sobs. Eli set the rifle down, knelt by the couch. "It's over, Leah. He's gone." She looked at him, eyes red, whispering, "You didn't send me back." "No," Eli said, voice thick. He glanced at Rook, who pressed his head into the girl's lap, tail thumping softly. "We kept you right where you belong." The fire crackled, warming the room. Outside, dawn began to stain the sky pale gold. But Eli knew this wasn't just an ending, it was a threshold. Tomorrow would bring courts, signatures, and scars. But tonight, in this battered little house, a soldier, a dog, and a child had chosen one another, and that choice had saved them all. The courtroom resolution. Weeks later, they stood once more in Judge Moore's courtroom. This time, the air was different. No shouting, no threats. Mark Dawson sat in custody elsewhere, facing charges of fraud, abuse, and falsification of medical records. His lawyer had withdrawn. Sarah Coleman presented the final petition for adoption. Her voice carried calm triumph. "Your Honor, Mr. Hart has provided stable guardianship for Leah these past months. CPS oversight confirms her safety and well-being. She has bonded deeply with both Mr. Hart and his service K9, Rook. We ask the court to finalize adoption." Grace Morgan, weary but smiling, added her professional recommendation. "I've watched this child transform. She laughs now. She plays. She sleeps without terror. That is because she feels safe. I believe Mr. Hart is the family she deserves." Judge Moore looked over her glasses, her sharp eyes softer than Eli had ever seen. "Leah, would you like to say anything?" The girl clutched her pink backpack, then Rook's harness. She stood, voice trembling but steady. "I want to stay with Eli. And with Rook. They're my family now." Silence filled the courtroom, heavy with meaning. Then the judge's gavel fell. "The petition is granted. Effective immediately, Leah Carter will be known as Leah Hart. Eli exhaled, his chest loosening in a way it hadn't in years. He looked down at the little girl, his daughter, now her grey eyes shining with something new, hope. A new home. Months later, Eli's cabin by Sebago Lake stood warm under the Sunday. The porch smelled of pine and fresh paint. Inside, the walls bore Leah's drawings, colourful houses, dogs with wagging tails, stick figures with big smiles. Rooks sprawled across the porch steps, tail thumping lazily whenever Leah ran past. One afternoon, Leah carried her easel outside, painting clumsy strokes of blue and green. "This one's us," she said, pointing at a crooked figure of a man, a girl with bright yellow hair, and a giant dog. Eli chuckled, ruffling her hair. "Looks just like us." She tilted her head. "We should hang it in the living room. Every single one goes up," he promised. Rook barked once, as if sealing the deal. The message. As the sun dipped low, they sat together on the porch, soldier, child, and dog. The lake shimmered gold, the air soft with spring. Eli pulled Leah close, her small head resting against his chest. He whispered, more to himself than anyone, "Sometimes the ones we save are the ones who save us." The ghosts of his wife and Emily still lingered, but the weight was lighter now. He had not replaced them. He had found new purpose because of them. Through Leah's small hand in his and Rook's steady heart at his side, he had discovered that broken things could be mended. Closing reflection. Sometimes God sends miracles wrapped in fragile skin and quiet whispers. Sometimes salvation comes not from victory in battle, but from choosing love in the ruins of loss. Eli Hart thought his story had ended years ago, when the world took more than he thought he could bear. But on a freezing night by the river, fate placed a child and a dog in his path, and together they built a family out of second chances. Because even in the coldest winters, hope never forgets us.